I would like to say, what a me, Mitigay Godambarak. Hello, friends, it's good to see you. My name is Greg Sims, everyone knows me as Uncle Greg. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge we are on Duduk land. I would like to acknowledge elders past and present. We don't own the land owns us. We come from Mother Earth, we are the land. And the land we're upon today belongs to the Ngarabi tribe of the Duduk Nation. Where I fit in, I come from the Gadigal tribe of the Duduk, which is based in Sydney, and there I belong to the Whale people. And also I belong to the Gundungurra Nation in the Blue Mountains, where I belong to the Water Dragon Lizard people. I'm one of the Aboriginal elders of Western Sydney and also one of the Aboriginal elders on the advisory committee at the Western Sydney University. I'd just like to thank the Blacktown Arts Centre for inviting me here today to do the Welcome to Country. It's for all this artwork, which the artists that's taken time out to do all this great art. And I'd just like to acknowledge other artists that do come into this building and exhibit their artwork. And here I am standing alongside of the Terra Infirma, and we've used that quite a few times. And but it's nice to come out here to down here to Blacktown Arts Centre. I've been involved with Blacktown Council, I would say, for the last 33 years. So I'd just like to say that we have great artists that come into this building, and we know every and each one of us, we are all born with talent. So, which is a good thing, and people, we need to show that talent, what we can actually do. And you don't have to be Philadelphia lawyer to do all these things. You know, you're just an ordinary person out in the community doing artwork or doing whatever you're good at with your hands. So a lot of good things happen in this building, and I just acknowledge the organisers that puts all this together. And so it's a very special, as far as I'm concerned, this is a very special place for people to come in and just browse around, and especially when when there's exhibitions are happening. And I know my sister over there, Liam Tobin, she does a lot of work in our communities, and I've seen her artwork all over the place, and it's second to none. So just love the artwork. So yes, and I'm not taking that away from the other artists we have here today. And so my dreaming is I'm the wood carver, and I work alongside of Uncle Wes Mahon, which is a storyteller. And the hardest people you can get to go into schools or go out to exhibit is Uncle Wes doing storytelling and I'm doing wood carving, because the wood carving is a dying art. And not far away now that I'm going to donate some of my artwork into this building so people can actually see that. And when people see that artwork, they'll probably think it comes from Central Australia. No, but it's in our backyard here, the wood carving and all that. So, you know, we can get our dancers anywhere, we can get our artists anywhere, but we can't get good artists anywhere, you know, at that matter. And as I was saying, Uncle Wes and I, you know, storyteller and a wood carver, very hard people to get. But I'm here to do the Welcome to Country for this special day. So just before I do, I would like to say that when we take our next step, just remember the ones that walked this sacred land before. Chari Mara, Daraka Pemo. Kami Maria Pelum the Gadarigi Bobana. My name is Waranang. No, I did see guy. Down and Gaman Yadalang. Nagalorigi tiari, nagalorigi nagami guy. Gulio when you're going to go, da going to go. Dalalawin mukakat bala nagami. This is allowing it to rim going to go. Jam tiari, nagalorigi or the Jomana. Medica garang barak ni daraka pemal. Did we go? This is Darek land, the land of ancestors. The spiritual walk among us. Spirits that have been here since the dream time. Our language and our culture been passed down from generation to generation to continue an unbroken culture that has extended for thousands of years. In the language of our people, we welcome you to Darek lands. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, Uncle Greg, for that very special welcome. We really appreciate walking and working on Darug land. My name's Alicia Talbot, and I'm the Manager of Arts and Cultural Development here at Blacktown Arts and Blacktown City Council. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the Mayor of Blacktown City, Councillor Tony Bleasdale.
Thank you, Uncle Greg, for that wonderful welcome to country. I too acknowledge the Darug people are the original custodians of the land on which we meet today. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge the Aboriginal people for their custodianship of this great land. We will work together for a united city that respects this land and values the contribution and cultures of all people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heritage. And I welcome you virtually to the Leo Kelly Blacktown Arts Centre to the launch of this wonderful exhibition. Blacktown City Council believes strongly that art and culture have a central role to play in the development of our great city. I'm proud that Blacktown City is home to the largest urban Aboriginal population in New South Wales. A priority of Blacktown Arts is to champion the creative practice and leadership of our First Nations artists and, of course, their communities, and to partner with them in new and exciting projects. The Blacktown Arts and Solid Ground team and their program have established long-term partnerships with our local schools, artists, and of course our great Darug leaders. We congratulate the artists. You have created extraordinary works. You have raised many points by discussion. And of course, you have rightly challenged the stereotypes of our history, and you have shared your rich heritage with us. Through your works, we can all, of course, achieve a better cultural understanding of events of 250 years ago, and we can all get a better understanding of the impacts those events have had on our communities. Thanks to the organisations that helped fund this exhibition, the Australia Council for the Arts and Create New South Wales, a huge thank you to the team at Leo Kelly Blacktown Arts Centre, and of course staff from across Blacktown City Council. Not only did your hard work make the exhibition possible, but you have done a magnificent job during the isolated times of COVID-19, online exhibitions, programs, virtual workshops. You kept the Blacktown Arts flag flying. And last but not least, but definitely not least, thank you to our online visitors for joining us today and on previous occasions. Without an audience, let me say, artists are only telling their stories to themselves. We look forward to welcoming you soon in person at the Leo Kelly Blacktown Arts Centre. Please come along when you can. Thank you.
Warraming Midiga, Nalawa. Welcome, friends, and really pleased to have everyone here today. My name's Leanne Tobin, and I'm part of the Darug mob here, descended from the Burburong and the Wamali, which is belonging to kangaroo and also possum. So I guess I got involved with my brother. Both of us were asked to come on board this project, Terra Infirma, as cultural consultants, along with Vanessa Possum, who's also a participating artist. And I guess the tricky part for us, I mean, straight away I was attracted by the idea of, we're on shaky ground, terra infirma. And it made me start thinking about my own process, because I'm also an artist, and a lot of my work is focused around telling stories of place, because a lot of the history from here, a lot of the stories are missing. And consequently, I felt it's almost a responsibility I have as a Darug descendant. I have to tell these stories, and I use all my skills to do so. So for me to come on as a cultural consultant is really important role for me to play, and I took it on board pretty seriously, as did my brother, to try and direct artists in a way that is going to be culturally friendly, but also not compromising their art practice. It's a tricky role to play, because I've found in my own dealings with other people, just recently actually I had a fellow who wanted to write a book about the Murnong lily. Murnong yam was a traditional yam that grew along the riverbanks here, but he was a white fellow, and he was saying they won't publish my book, and I had to explain to him, you've got to be really careful with this stuff, because there's still stories that we as Aboriginal people are trying to pull together again. A lot of it was lost when our land was taken from us, and many of us, my family was one, became invisible. We went underground, and as soon as our colour changed, my grandmother made the decision to just not be Aboriginal, just be invisible, because it was a way of survival, and it made it very hard for us to continue connection to country, to continue family stories, oral tradition that is very much part of our Aboriginal practice. And I found that art, once I found my own connections again, we found out later on in life, I was 23 when I found out our family story, and from that day my whole world changed, my whole world view totally changed. I flip-sided from Australia Day celebrations to suddenly great deep sadness at the fact that my mother and my grandmother had to hide those stories. My grandmother chose to just not share any of it. And so consequently, I feel very, very responsible to encourage people to tell stories. So when other artists who are non-Indigenous approach me to help or guide with artworks, I've got to do it very carefully, because it's shaky ground. You've got to be careful with what you say, how you approach it. You don't want to offend people, but at the same time you want to acknowledge. And you know, our narrative is we've never ceded sovereignty. We've always been here. We've never gone away. We've got diaspora now with other Aboriginal people coming from other areas living on country. Our threads and stories are broken and disconnected. So we rely, and I actually encourage allies, people who are open to telling our story. I want those people to come and tell their observations, because as I said, when I realised my own Aboriginal heritage, your view changes the world. You can't see the landscape the same anymore. It is a different place. And so working with Gary's beautiful work, which was a collaborative work with Bidwell High, under stressful conditions with COVID and all, we wanted to conduct ceremony. Ceremony was broken and shut down for Darug people for a very long time. But we are now in the process of renewal, of bringing ceremony back, and that takes place in lots of different ways, whether it's on country, whether it's in a building here, divided and separated from other people, not able to bring children in here to be actively involved in the work they created, but representing them. So it's made everyone think divergently. I think Gary's done a fantastic job of that. And I guess he's going to explain a bit more of what the process behind the work. But for me, that underlying landscape, that underlying country, I've even wrote a song called The Song Sings On, which actually reflects on that. Regardless of what goes on top, the roads you lay down, the buildings you build, the shoes on our feet, that story is still there. It might be covered in concrete, it might be covered with bridges. Those rivers and creeks are still running through this place. and they still retain and hold those stories of country from the past. And so any artwork that brings that to light, highlights it, examines it, looks at it, gets other people, and that's where the ceremonial part comes into it, where people come together and create memories, create ceremony that then are shared stories that form positive healing stories that adds another layer to what's already here. Not all of it's very nice. So we welcome those people who come as allies and friends who wish to bring those stories to light, to highlight our histories, because you really can't reconcile until you've actually acknowledged what's happened. And not everyone knows the full truth of what happened in the Sydney area yet. It's the first impacted area, yet it's the last one to be really examined and addressed. We've got so much division even amongst our own people because of the things that were imposed on us 250 or 230 odd years ago with the First Fleet. I was only reading today about, this morning, before I came down, I was reading about another navigator who had come into Botany Bay in 1522. Now, no one's talked about him, but he was like 250 years before Captain Cook. Christopher de Mendoza. He was a Portuguese sailor. And I just thought, wow, see, there's all these people that visited and rode past, looked in, stopped, got water. We had ongoing relations with, up the top end with the Malaccas people who would come in the wet seasons and conduct ceremony, but also trade. Those relationships are sort of very much a distant memory, but are still there. And we call them, invading fishing boats now up north, but they've always been doing it. Some of those things now need to be looked at, re-examined, and readdressed and brought to light. And I think with Gary's piece, where he's used the children's backgrounds from different areas, they've come from different parts of the world, their families have history now in this place. So sharing that history is a big part of it. And same with the other projects. I was involved with a couple of the other artworks that are here, where they're looking at renaming, looking back at describing country without the oppressors or the colonists' names on top. So, it just makes you view things through different lenses, and I think that's really important. Anyway, I guess I will finish that now and say, Yanama, Gumara Bulu, walk with good spirit, Didrigo, Yana.
My name is Gary Carsley and I'm a Queen from Queensland, and I live and work on Gadigal country. I'm very happy to be here in Blacktown today because in my cosmology, Blacktown, not Botany Bay, is the foundational loci of Australia. I believe very strongly that contemporary Australia was spoken into being in this place, just a few hundred metres from here at Heffernan Hall, by Gough Whitlam in 1972. So for me, it has always been a tremendously important site. Botany Bay I find divisive and a site of dispossession, and I've found what happened here in the 1970s, that acknowledgement, to be the creation of a more inclusive society, and so I'm very happy and I feel myself privileged to be here in the cradle of contemporary Australia. The work is a series, it's called Site, Site, Site. It's a play on words, but it deals with the idea that I'm quoting from sites of first contact between so-called great navigators and First Nations people. So they are Malacca, Cebu and Botany Bay. So in each of these places there are commemorative parks, and this construction of a landscape as culture reminds us of an older construction of culture, which is country. So in that overlap between the paradigms landscape and country, is a place for acknowledgement, because in the absence of acknowledgement there cannot be reconciliation. So this work endeavours not to represent acknowledgement, but in the mode of its practice, to acknowledge the people who contributed meaningfully to the production of the work, and to find a way to acknowledge that the Western landscape tradition within which I largely work in this country, this image of that we've had from John Glover on, of a progressively possessed place, is concurrently an image of dispossession. We need to understand that every image that we look at of contemporary Australian landscape is at the very least two things. It's an image of erasure, what we imagine was erasure, but I wanted to try to find a way in which it was possible to produce an image that, without a hierarchy, could be the stage for multiple voices to speak at once. I was very privileged. I want to thank Debbie Higgins, who took me to Bidwell College and introduced me to the teachers and the students, and with whom I developed the image over several visits prior to COVID that interrupted the direct physical contact with the students. So the image is realised, it has a philosophical proposition in which an identical image in positive and negative forms is by switching between the positive and the negative, and I'm not casting them as good or bad in the sense, it's just that they are, one is an inverted form of the other. By moving backwards and forwards between these, it's possible not to image participation and to image inclusion and acknowledgement, but to enact it within the work. Because I think we have enough images of reconciliation. We need meaningful acts that acknowledge country, and so this A4 photocopy, it's a public work. It can be produced on any home printer. Oscillates between these two forms of the image, the positive and the negative image, enabling the students to enact their identity within this in a clearly visible way, but still has the continuity of the image that underlays it. So the concluding part, which was an idea for a ceremony that came out of the first meetings that Paul arranged between us, all of the artists, at which I met Leanne for the first time. And Leanne spoke about her work. She spoke about a work that she'd done at the site of the Blacktown Native Institute, in which, when people came together, a ceremony spontaneously, and forgive me, Leanne, if I miscite you, so it was an improvisational and spontaneous ceremony. But what Leanne stressed very strongly was this misconception that ceremonies are located in the past. And she argued that ceremonies can be used when people come together to create new communities. And that I found to be a really inspirational insight, and I thank you profoundly for it. So this modest ceremony that concludes the work, because now it's more or less finished, although it's been 2 weeks as it infects the wall as a type of contagion. It has a distinctive, it's not a piece of wallpaper, it's not meant to cover. We've had enough wallpapering both in life and in art. It's a very patiently applied image in which those participants who installed the work are included and finish it officially by placing against the wall a series of spatializing elements that contain the continuity of the image behind it and heal that rupture caused by the foregrounding of the image as it touches the floor, as it reaches the present. So it acknowledges that Indigenous Australia always has been present, That we have chosen not to see that presence, or we've deliberately chosen to ignore it, is not a sustainable position if we want authentic, really meaningful reconciliation. It has to proceed from acknowledging that this always has been Indigenous land. And so yes, this is more or less the framework for the image. And I want to thank particularly the teachers at Bidwell and their students and all of the people at Blacktown. Thank you very much.